I remember I was like 4 or something, and I ate an Oreo, and I was like mid Oreo. And my brother was like, cookies make you fat. And I was like, and I ran to the bathroom and I spit it in the sink. And I didn't like have the not the foresight to wash it off, like the sink counter. And then my dad came home. It's like, what the is this? Just this giant black spot. And I was just like, oh no, this is all my fault. It's because I ate a cookie and I'm gonna be fat. And I was like, well, being fat is the worst thing ever. And then I think it probably didn't like all start from there, but that was definitely a time where I was conscious of like being fat is a thing you don't want to be. And I mean, that has just like been a thing that's no matter what I do, no matter what day it is, no matter what I eat, that's always in the back of my head is like, don't want to be fat. Don't want to be fat. Can't be fat.
Oh, there's a good one. Okay. It was actually an event that happened that kind of made me start questioning or wanting to lose weight. There's this girl that I liked. I think it was in 5th grade. Her friend asked me if I was interested in her, and I said yes. That was like the bravest moment I've ever had. So I said yes, I was interested in her and I liked her. She went around to go tell her friend, and in slow motion, the girl turned around. She was just like, it just, yeah, I saw it all in slow motion, and that from then on, I realized like that's this is probably an issue that I should work on. Yeah, and then that kind of like set me up for the future.
The 8th grade when I used to be a majorette, the girls in basically like swimsuits and boots, twirling batons. And I was auditioning for the high school team at the next high school up. And not to be cocky, but I was one of the best, and everyone said so. And then I didn't make the team. And I remember like being so sad and crying and being crushed. And my coach of the middle school, I asked her, I was like, was I not good enough? And she was like, nah, baby, I'm sorry. One of my friends overheard her talking to the coach of the high school team and found out that the reason why I didn't make it because they said my thighs and my boobs were too big. And I just remember being like crushed. And like now, like they're big, but I had a breast reduction like 5 or 6 years ago. And so they were pretty big. And I just remember thinking like, but I was one of the best girls. And so, yeah.
I was with my best friend when we were little, and we were playing with this ball, and it's such a goofy story. But and she wanted to do this like weird game, and I was like, "Oh, that's stupid," or something like, "Let's do this instead." And she got mad and like started crying and went inside, and her grandma came out and was like, "You're bigger than Hannah, so like you have to like do what she says," kind of. And I don't really know what she meant in that. Like, I'm sure it was just like, oh, like your personality's a little more controlling or something like that. But in that moment, I was like, oh, I'm bigger than her. And like, I'll never, like, it's so weird. That was when I was 6 and it stays with you. So that always just like had a really big effect on me.
So when I was about 6 or 7, I really wanted to be a gymnast because it was just fun. And it was one of the few sports that I had encountered at that point that I really enjoyed. And eventually, one of the coaches at the little gymnastics place I went to sort of took me aside with my mom and said, this is never going to be your career because you're already hitting your feet on the uneven bars. You're going to be too tall. And then I went and tried to do figure skating because I didn't learn my lesson. And it was the exact same kind of problem.
My mom tells me that I would like come home from kindergarten and then I'd be like, I really don't like my butt. Like I'd be crying about it because I guess I noticed that the other girls didn't have like as big a butt as I did. And she'd be like, I don't know what to tell you, it's just, it is what it is. It's kind of what you got. Like you got to work with it,
I do remember looking in the mirror. I actually haven't told anyone this story before. Looking in the mirror very closely. I was really close to the mirror itself and looking in my eyes and thinking like, I like that about myself. I hope that one day, like my eyes, like someone will see how beautiful my eyes are and then they'll know that I'm pretty versus like me as a whole. And I was very young. I remember the house we were living in, and we moved out of there when I was like 7 or something. So it was between probably the ages of like 3 and 7, and thinking like that was the only pretty part of me.
Well, I had a boyfriend for 10 years in high school when you're young and you're like, just your emotions are crazy and you have no practicality, at all, no sense of it. And so, we were mean to each other and, we fought all the time. And that was always tough. I remember his brother one time making a joke about my hair, just because kids were mean to each other, and he made a comment about my hair being so fine and said, like, you're going to be bald by the time you're 30, or something like that. And I just remember, I remember it to this day. I remember a girl, like, making a joke that a friend of a friend told me that said, like, her overbite is insane. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And I had to Google overbite because I was just like, I don't even know what that is, So learning about how other people view you is definitely an interesting thing. It's tough because you haven't hit that acceptance stage. It's like stage 1.
So I was probably like 8, and I remember being on vacation with my family, and I have a wonderful family, and we were in the Bahamas, and I had this little 2-piece, and for like an 8-year-old, and I met this girl on vacation who was there with her family, this young girl my age, and we would play on the beach and everything. And I remember she had a 2-piece, and she was one of those younger kids who was just thinner. And I literally remember that young just being like, I'm fat. I'm too fat to wear this. And I don't even know where that would come from.
I remember I was taking jiu-jitsu for a while. And this old timer was there, and he knew my sensei at the time. And one day he comes up to me and he's like, you know what would be best for you is if you lose weight and then come back to the class. And it crushed me. It crushed me because I was having the best time of my life. I was having the best time. I was struggling because I'm not as physically fit as everyone else in the class, but I was having the best time.
The earliest memory I have is when I think I was probably around 7 or 8, and I was in ballet class with like all of my friends from my neighborhood, and we'd all carpool together. And I was in class, and I had a teacher who would I felt pick on me. When you're in dance class, you get adjustments, especially in ballet. You need to find a proper alignment. There's a lot of things that are happening at the same time at the bar. And she would come and she would kind of pass us by, and she would adjust me every single time she came by me. And there was a couple times in particular, one of the biggest times I remember, she came in and she pushed my stomach in to the point where it hurt. And I was embarrassed, and all my friends saw that. And I never wanted to go to ballet ever again. In fact, I didn't go to ballet ever again until I was an adult.
There was a coincidence, the first girl I was ever into, and she was into me. She stopped being into me, but I thought it had to do with me gaining weight. I thought. It turns out it was made up. She confirmed that she was always into me. So I made my own poison and drank it. And so I've been dealing with it since, And I think that's why it's so important to talk about this stuff. I made that up. Had nothing to do with my body, my weight, my anything. I made it up. And that's why it's important to talk about it. If she and I got together and talked about it, or if everybody talked about these kinds of things, imagine where my life would have been.
Hey,